The fluorescent lights hummed their midnight song as Maria Santos pushed her cart down the sterile corridors of Fort Mitchell. At 58, she had become part of the base's architecture, invisible, reliable, essential in ways nobody bothered to notice. Her weathered hands guided the mop with practiced efficiency, leaving behind flaws that gleamed under the harsh institutional lighting. "Evening, Mrs. Santos," called Sergeant Bradley, barely glancing up from his paperwork at the security desk. He'd been greeting her the same way for 7 years, never quite meeting her eyes, never realizing that beneath her humble demeanor lay secrets that could shake the very foundations of military protocol. Maria nodded with her characteristic shy smile, the one that had served as both shield and camouflage throughout her tenure at the base. She understood more English than she let on, caught fragments of conversations that weren't meant for civilian ears, observed patterns that trained soldiers missed in their daily routines. Tonight felt different. The base buzzed with an undercurrent of tension that Maria's finely tuned instincts couldn't ignore. Colonel Harrison had stayed late again, his office light burning bright, while hushed phone calls echoed through the thin walls. Young Lieutenant Torres paced the corridors with nervous energy, checking his watch every few minutes, as if counting down to something significant. As Maria cleaned the windows of the communications center, she noticed the unusual activity. 3 black SUVs sat in the visitor parking, vehicles that hadn't been there during her afternoon shift. Their occupants remained invisible, but their presence cast long shadows across the base's normal operations. "Ma'am, you need to finish up in Sector 7 quickly tonight," Corporal Jenkins informed her, his voice carrying an edge she'd never heard before. "Special inspection tomorrow morning. Everything needs to be perfect." Maria nodded obediently, but her mind raced. Special inspections meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant questions. Questions meant the kind of attention that could unravel everything she'd worked to protect. She wheeled her cart toward the restricted wing, using her master key, a privilege earned through years of impeccable service and invisible reliability. The hallways here held different energy, charged with the weight of classified operations and strategic planning. Maps covered walls, displaying operational theaters that most Americans would never see on the evening news. The sound stopped her cold. A metallic scraping, subtle but distinctly wrong, emanating from the ventilation system above. Maria had cleaned these halls thousands of times. She knew every sound, every vibration, every normal rhythm of the building's mechanical heartbeat. This wasn't normal. She positioned her cart strategically, creating a buffer between herself and the main corridor, then climbed onto a sturdy cleaning bucket to investigate. Her fingers found the loose grate immediately, screws barely held in place, metal still warm from recent disturbance. Through the opening, she spotted it. A small device, no bigger than a smartphone, its red LED blinking steadily in the darkness. Professional training from another lifetime kicked in automatically. Maria recognized surveillance equipment when she saw it, understood its implications with crystalline clarity. Someone was monitoring Fort Mitchell's classified communications. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she carefully photographed the device with her phone, documenting its position and connections without disturbing the installation. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to pretend she'd seen nothing, to maintain the safe anonymity she'd cultivated for nearly a decade. But Fort Mitchell housed more than military personnel. The daycare center, where her granddaughter attended preschool, sat just outside the main gate. The commissary where military families bought groceries. The housing complex where young soldiers raised their children. If this intelligence fell into the wrong hands, if enemy operatives gained access to strategic communications, the consequences would extend far beyond military casualties. Maria climbed down, her mind already formulating plans. She couldn't approach Colonel Harrison directly. A janitor's word against sophisticated espionage would carry little weight. She needed proof, evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Moving with purpose now, she began documenting everything unusual she'd observed over recent weeks. The maintenance requests for ventilation work that hadn't appeared on official schedules. The new contractor who'd spent extensive time in restricted areas. The subtle changes in personnel behavior that had set her nerves on edge. As she worked, memories surfaced unbidden. Memories of another time, another uniform, another life where she'd been Captain Maria Elena Santos Rodriguez, decorated intelligence officer specializing in counter-espionage operations, before the injury that ended her military career, before the divorce that stripped away her identity, before she'd chosen invisibility over recognition, safety over pride. The Medal of Valor sat hidden in her apartment closet, buried beneath old coats and forgotten dreams. A reminder of who she'd been before life demanded she become someone else entirely. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter Carmen. "Mama, Sophia's school play is tomorrow at 3. You promised you'd be there." The weight of dual responsibilities settled on her shoulders like familiar armor. She was a grandmother now, a simple cleaning woman whose greatest concern should be making rent and keeping her job. But she was also the only person positioned to prevent what could become a devastating security breach. Maria finished documenting the device's location, then carefully repositioned the grate to appear undisturbed. Tomorrow, she would need to make contact with base security, without revealing too much about how a janitor had acquired such sophisticated knowledge of surveillance equipment. As she returned to her cleaning routine, maintaining the facade of invisible diligence, Maria caught sight of her reflection in the polished floor. For just a moment, she saw not the hunched figure of an aging cleaning woman, but the straight spine and alert eyes of the officer she'd once been. The transformation would have to wait until morning. Tonight, she was still just Maria Santos, invisible guardian of Fort Mitchell, protecting secrets that no one suspected she understood. But tomorrow, everything would change. The question wasn't whether she could prevent disaster. Her training had prepared her for scenarios far more complex than this. The question was whether she could do it without destroying the quiet life she'd built from the ashes of her former identity. Outside, the black SUVs waited in the darkness, like patient predators. Dawn brought no relief to Maria's sleepless night. She sat at her small kitchen table, coffee growing cold as she stared at the photographs on her phone. The surveillance device gleamed malevolently in the artificial light, its implications growing more serious with each passing hour. Her apartment reflected the careful simplicity of her constructed life. Generic furniture, family photos strategically placed to suggest normal domesticity, nothing that would indicate her true background. Only she knew that the loose floorboard beneath her bed concealed emergency cash, false identification documents, and a secure phone that hadn't been activated in 8 years. The Medal of Valor remained buried in her closet, wrapped in tissue paper, alongside commendations she could never display. Distinguished Service Cross for her work in Afghanistan, Bronze Star for counterintelligence operations in Iraq, a career's worth of recognition for a woman who no longer officially existed. Carmen called at 7:30, as she did every Tuesday morning. "Mama, you sound tired. Are you feeling okay?" "Just working late, Misha," Maria replied, forcing lightness into her voice. "Don't forget about Sophia's play today. 3 o'clock sharp, you promised." Carmen's tone carried gentle reproach. "She's been practicing her lines for weeks. She wants her abuela there more than anyone." The weight of ordinary family obligations pressed against the extraordinary circumstances unfolding at the base. Maria had built this life deliberately. The devoted grandmother, the reliable employee, the invisible woman whose greatest concerns were making rent and attending school plays. But Captain Santos Rodriguez would never have hesitated when national security hung in the balance. At Fort Mitchell, the morning shift brought new complications. Colonel Harrison arrived earlier than usual, his jaw set with the particular tension that Maria recognized from briefings before dangerous deployments. Lieutenant Torres shadowed him closely, tablet in hand, their conversation too low to overhear, but urgent enough to set her instincts screaming. "Big day today, Mrs. Santos," Sergeant Bradley commented as she signed in at security. "Lots of VIPs coming through. They'll want everything extra clean." Maria nodded with her practiced humility, but her trained eye caught details that Bradley missed. The visitor log showed 17 appointments, unprecedented for a Tuesday. More black SUVs filled the parking areas. Men in expensive suits moved through corridors typically populated by military personnel. She began her cleaning routine in the administration wing, positioning herself where she could observe without appearing to eavesdrop. Fragments of conversation drifted from offices. Final phase of negotiations. Strategic partnerships in Eastern Europe. Cannot afford any security breaches. Maria's blood ran cold. If foreign operatives had infiltrated Fort Mitchell's communications during sensitive international negotiations, the consequences would be catastrophic. Trade agreements, military partnerships, intelligence-sharing protocols, all could be compromised. At 10:15, she made her decision. Maria approached the restricted wing, using her maintenance access to reach the ventilation system. The surveillance device remained exactly where she'd found it, but now she noticed additional details her nighttime reconnaissance had missed. Professional-grade equipment, military specifications, installation that required extensive technical knowledge. This wasn't random espionage. Someone with insider access had placed this device. She carefully removed her phone, documenting every angle, every connection, every detail that might prove relevant. Then she did something that violated every protocol from her previous life. She touched the device. Her fingers found the manufacturer's mark, nearly invisible etching that identified the equipment's origin. Chinese military technology, sophisticated enough to penetrate standard encryption, compact enough to avoid detection by routine sweeps. Maria's heart rate spiked. This represented far more than simple surveillance. It was preparation for something larger, more devastating than casual intelligence gathering. Moving quickly now, she resealed the ventilation grate and returned to her cleaning cart. But instead of continuing her normal routine, she made her way to Colonel Harrison's outer office, where his assistant, Sergeant Williams, handled administrative duties. "Excuse me," Maria said softly, adopting her most broken English pronunciation. "I find something wrong, maybe dangerous." Sergeant Williams barely looked up from her computer. "What kind of wrong, Mrs. Santos?" "In the walls. Strange box with red light. Not supposed to be there." This caught Williams' attention. Security protocols demanded investigation of any unusual findings, even those reported by cleaning staff. "Show me where you found it." Maria led her to the restricted wing, demonstrating how she'd discovered the device during routine cleaning. Williams examined the ventilation grate with growing alarm, her military training recognizing the significance immediately. "Don't touch anything else," Williams ordered, reaching for her radio. "Colonel Harrison needs to see this immediately." Within minutes, the base erupted into controlled chaos. Security teams swept the building systematically, searching for additional devices. Colonel Harrison arrived with his senior staff, their faces grim as they assessed the breach. "Mrs. Santos," Colonel Harrison addressed her directly, for the first time in 7 years. "You found this during your normal cleaning routine?" "Yes, sir. Strange noise. Not normal. I look up, find the box." Harrison studied her carefully, his experienced eye noting details that others missed. Maria Santos was older than most cleaning staff, carried herself with subtle confidence, spoke with an accent that seemed somehow cultivated rather than natural. "Have you noticed anything else unusual recently? People who don't belong? Strange activities? Anything out of the ordinary?" Maria considered her response carefully. Too much knowledge would raise questions she couldn't answer without revealing her background. Too little might allow the real perpetrators to escape. "New maintenance man, maybe 2 weeks ago. He work in ceiling, but I not see him on schedule. Strange tools, very expensive." This information sent Harrison's team into overdrive. Personnel records were pulled, contractor credentials examined, security footage reviewed. Within an hour, they'd identified Marcus Webb, a maintenance specialist, whose credentials appeared legitimate, but whose background couldn't withstand serious scrutiny. Webb had vanished that morning, his hotel room abandoned, his vehicle found at Reagan National Airport. "Mrs. Santos," Harrison said, "you may have prevented a serious security breach. We're grateful for your vigilance." But his eyes held questions that made Maria's stomach tighten. Career military officers developed instincts about people, ability to recognize training and competence, even when disguised as humble service. As the investigation continued around her, Maria maintained her facade of confused cooperation, but she knew this was only the beginning. Webb's device had been discovered, but sophisticated operations rarely relied on single points of failure. Somewhere in Fort Mitchell, other threats remained hidden. Her phone buzzed with a reminder: Sophia's school play in 3 hours. The collision between her two worlds, grandmother and guardian, was accelerating beyond her control. The auditorium at Riverside Elementary buzzed with parental excitement as Maria slipped into a back-row seat, still shaken from the morning's events. On stage, 7-year-old Sophia adjusted her butterfly wings with nervous concentration, scanning the audience until she spotted her abuela's familiar face. Maria forced a smile and waved, but her mind remained trapped in the corridors of Fort Mitchell. 3 additional surveillance devices had been discovered following her initial report, each one positioned to monitor critical communications channels. The scope of the breach was staggering. Whoever orchestrated this operation had mapped the base's security infrastructure with surgical precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our butterflies to the garden," the teacher announced, and Maria pushed her concerns aside to focus on her granddaughter's moment. But even as Sophia fluttered across the stage, reciting lines about transformation and growth, Maria's trained instincts screamed warnings. A man in the 3rd row kept checking his phone with urgent frequency. Another parent near the exit maintained constant visual contact with the auditorium's entrances, details that would escape civilian notice, but set off alarms for someone with Maria's background. During intermission, Carmen approached with glowing pride. "Isn't she amazing, Mama? She's been practicing those lines for weeks." "Beautiful, mija. She's perfect." Maria hugged her daughter while her eyes continued scanning the crowd. "I may need to leave a little early. Work emergency." "On a Tuesday afternoon? Mama, you're just a janitor. What kind of emergency could—" Carmen stopped mid-sentence, noticing her mother's expression. Despite Maria's careful construction of ordinary life, her daughter occasionally glimpsed flashes of the woman she'd been before. The mother who'd once disappeared for months at a time on classified assignments, who'd taught her to recognize surveillance and escape routes before teaching her to drive. "Is everything okay?" Carmen's voice carried sudden concern. "Just extra cleaning for tomorrow's inspection. Nothing serious." But Maria's phone was already buzzing with messages from Fort Mitchell. Colonel Harrison wanted to see her immediately. The investigation had taken an urgent turn. She stayed long enough to watch Sophia take her final bow, then slipped out during the applause. The drive to the base took 20 minutes, 20 minutes during which her secure phone, silent for 8 years, suddenly chirped with an encrypted message. The number was one she recognized. CIA counterintelligence, emergency contact protocols from her previous life. Someone had connected Maria Santos, base janitor, with Captain Maria Elena Santos Rodriguez, decorated intelligence officer presumed dead in a training accident 5 years earlier. Her hands trembled as she read the message. "Extraction available. Current position compromised. Respond within 6 hours." Fort Mitchell's security checkpoint had doubled its personnel. Guards examined her identification with unusual scrutiny before waving her through. Colonel Harrison waited in his office alongside 2 individuals Maria recognized despite never having met them. FBI counterintelligence specialists whose photographs she'd memorized during active duty. "Mrs. Santos," Harrison began carefully, We need to discuss your background. The moment she'd dreaded for 8 years had arrived. Maria sat down, her mind already calculating exit strategies, safe house locations, emergency protocols she'd hoped never to use again. Your fingerprints were processed as part of our security investigation, one FBI agent explained. Imagine our surprise when they matched those of Captain Maria Elena Santos Rodriguez, officially killed in a training accident in 2018. Maria said nothing. Silence was her strongest weapon now. The exceptional record, the second agent continued, flipping through a classified file. Counterintelligence specialist, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. Decorated for infiltrating enemy networks, preventing terrorist attacks, saving American lives. The kind of officer who doesn't simply disappear. Harrison leaned forward. The question is whether you're running from something or running to something. Either way, you've been working in proximity to classified materials for 7 years without proper clearance. I clean floors, Maria said quietly, maintaining her accent. Nothing more. Someone who just cleans floors doesn't recognize Chinese military surveillance equipment, the first agent countered. Doesn't photograph devices with professional precision. Doesn't identify installation techniques that require advanced technical training. The walls were closing in, but Maria had survived worse interrogations. I see strange thing, I report. Good citizen. Harrison studied her with growing respect. Even cornered, she maintained operational discipline, revealing nothing that could compromise ongoing investigations or personnel safety. Captain Santos Rodriguez specialized in deep cover operations, he told his FBI colleagues. I could maintain false identities for months, blend into any environment, become invisible when necessary. If she's been protecting this base for 7 years without anyone suspecting her true capabilities, then she's either the most dedicated patriot we've ever encountered, the first agent said, or the most sophisticated enemy operative. Maria's secure phone buzzed again. The message was urgent. Window closing. Hostile elements converging on your location. Immediate extraction recommended. She looked up at the 3 men studying her with professional intensity, then made a decision that would change everything. Colonel Harrison, she said, dropping her accent entirely, her voice carrying the authority of her former rank, how long do you think Marcus Webb had been operating before I discovered his surveillance equipment? The transformation was startling. The hunched janitor straightened into military posture, her eyes sharp with intelligence that had been carefully hidden for years. Webb had base access for 6 weeks, Harrison replied, recognizing the change in her demeanor. 6 weeks to map your security protocols, identify key personnel, document classified communications patterns. His surveillance devices were just the final phase. What you should be asking is what he was preparing for. The FBI agents exchanged glances. This was no longer an interrogation. It was a briefing from a seasoned intelligence professional. What do you think he was preparing for? Harrison asked. Maria stood, pacing to the window overlooking the base's central courtyard. Webb wasn't working alone. Chinese military equipment suggests state-level operation. Timing coincides with your current international negotiations. Someone wants to know exactly what agreements you're discussing, what concessions you're willing to make. You've been monitoring our operations, the second agent accused. I've been protecting them, Maria corrected. For 7 years, I've watched this base, learned its rhythms, identified potential vulnerabilities, not because I was ordered to, but because Fort Mitchell houses 300 military families. Because my granddaughter plays at the daycare center just outside the main gate. Her phone buzzed a 3rd time. Hostile contact imminent. Move now. Maria looked at the message, then at the 3 men who held her immediate future in their hands. Gentlemen, we have a more pressing problem than my identity crisis. Webb didn't just gather intelligence, he positioned assets for something bigger. And based on my current communications, that something is about to happen. Outside, black SUVs were moving into position around the base perimeter. The explosion shattered the afternoon calm like thunder, sending tremors through Colonel Harrison's office as alarms screamed across Fort Mitchell. Maria dove toward the window, her movements fluid and professional as she assessed the damage. Smoke billowed from the communications building, exactly what she'd feared. "That's our primary satellite uplink," Harrison shouted over the sirens, reaching for his emergency phone. "We've lost contact with CENTCOM." "It's not random," Maria called back, her training taking complete control. "They're isolating you before the main assault. Classic infiltration protocol." The FBI agents looked stunned as Maria shed the last vestiges of her janitor persona, moving with the lethal precision of an elite operative. She grabbed Harrison's tactical radio, switching to emergency frequencies with practiced ease. "All units, this is—" She paused, realizing she no longer had official call signs. "This is Watchdog. We have coordinated attack in progress. Expect secondary targets within 10 minutes. "Who the hell is Watchdog?" came the confused response from base security. Harrison took the radio. "Watchdog is authorized. Follow her lead." Through the window, Maria counted vehicles surrounding the base perimeter. Too many for standard security protocols to handle, too coordinated for random terrorism. This was military-level assault planning. Her secure phone buzzed. "Extraction helicopter 2 minutes out. Roof access recommended." She showed the message to Harrison. "My people are offering evacuation. But that means abandoning Fort Mitchell to whatever these operatives have planned." "Your people?" the first FBI agent demanded. "CIA counterintelligence. They've been monitoring my situation, maintaining extraction protocols in case my cover was blown." Maria's voice was calm despite the chaos. "The question is whether I run or fight." Another explosion rocked the base, the motor pool this time, eliminating rapid response vehicles. Maria's mind raced through tactical assessments, calculating odds, identifying defensive positions. "How many hostile operatives are we facing?" Harrison asked. "Based on vehicle count and coordination level, I estimate 15 to 20 combatants. Professional training, military equipment, specific objectives." Maria pulled up building schematics on Harrison's computer with stunning familiarity. "And they'll target command structure next, then ammunition storage." "How do you know Fort Mitchell's layout that well?" 7 years of cleaning every corridor, every office, every restricted area. I know this base better than most of your officers." The helicopter's rotors thundered overhead as Harrison made rapid decisions. "Agent Richards, coordinate with base security. Agent Morrison, contact FBI tactical response. I need 10-minute ETAs on backup." 20 minutes minimum for FBI, Morrison replied after quick calls. "Local law enforcement has no equipment for this level of assault." Maria listened to the tactical chatter while watching hostile forces position themselves with military precision. 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours. They'll have achieved their primary objectives and extracted by then. Her phone showed another message: "Extraction leaving in 90 seconds. This is your final chance." She looked at the screen, then at Colonel Harrison coordinating desperate defensive measures. Outside, smoke continued rising from damaged buildings. Somewhere in the base housing complex, military families huddled in their homes, trusting that someone would protect them. Somewhere in town, Sophia was probably just getting home from school, excited to tell her mother about the butterfly play. Maria powered down the secure phone and slipped it into her pocket. "I'm staying," she announced. Harrison looked surprised. "You could disappear right now. New identity, new life, complete safety." "I've been protecting this base for 7 years. I'm not stopping now." She moved to Harrison's weapons locker, entering the combination with authority that made the FBI agent step back. Inside, she selected a tactical rifle and sidearm with the efficiency of someone intimately familiar with both. "Captain," Harrison said, unconsciously using her former rank, "what's your assessment of their primary objective?" "The timing tells us everything. International negotiations, communications surveillance, coordinated assault on your command infrastructure. They want to intercept or disrupt something specific happening today. Maria checked her weapons with muscle memory precision. What classified communications were scheduled for this afternoon? Harrison's face went pale. Strategic arms negotiation with NATO allies. Final terms were supposed to be transmitted to Washington at 1600 hours. That's it. They're not here to steal information. They're here to prevent you from sending it. Someone wants these negotiations to fail. The tactical situation crystallized in Maria's mind. Not theft, but sabotage. Not intelligence gathering, but strategic disruption. Enemy operatives positioned to ensure that crucial diplomatic agreements never reached their intended recipients. Can the transmission be sent from alternate locations? She asked. Negative. The encryption protocols require our specific hardware, biometric authorization from senior staff. Everything's centralized in the command bunker. Another explosion, closer this time. The administration building shook as windows shattered throughout the complex. They're moving toward the command center, Maria observed. Approximately 8 minutes before they breach the bunker. We need to reach it first. She outlined rapid tactical movement through service corridors she knew better than anyone. Harrison coordinated his remaining security personnel, while the FBI agents established communication with incoming backup forces. The service tunnels connect every major building, Maria explained, pulling up maintenance maps. I can guide a small team through routes the attackers won't know. Get us to the command center before they break through. What about civilian personnel? Already evacuated to designated safe areas. Your security protocols actually work pretty well. She almost smiled despite the circumstances. I've been testing them informally for years. As they prepared to move, Maria caught her reflection in Harrison's office mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the invisible janitor who'd started this day. This was Captain Maria Elena Santos Rodriguez, decorated intelligence officer, emerging from years of carefully constructed anonymity to face the greatest challenge of either identity. Harrison handed her a communication headset. What should we call you, Captain? She thought about her granddaughter's butterfly play, about transformation and growth, about the medal hidden in her closet that represented the woman she'd been forced to abandon. Call me Guardian, she said. I've been watching over this place long enough. Outside, hostile forces advanced on the command bunker with military precision. Inside, a woman presumed dead prepared to defend everything she'd spent years protecting. The real battle was about to begin. The service tunnels beneath Fort Mitchell smelled of industrial cleaner and machine oil, scents that had become as familiar to Maria as her own heartbeat during 7 years of invisible maintenance. Now these forgotten passages would serve as her battlefield. The intimate knowledge she'd gained through patient observation transformed into tactical advantage. Guardian, this is base command. Harrison's voice crackled through her headset as she led the team through narrow corridors. Hostiles have breached the outer perimeter of the command bunker. You have approximately 4 minutes before they reach the transmission equipment. Maria moved with fluid precision through the maze of maintenance shafts, her muscle memory guiding them past steam pipes and electrical conduits toward the bunker's rear access. Behind her, 6 of Harrison's best security personnel struggled to match her pace through terrain they'd never imagined navigating. And 2 minutes to rear access, she reported, checking her tactical display. What's the status on the NATO transmission? Encryption sequence initiated. We need 12 minutes minimum to complete the upload. 12 minutes against professionals who'd planned this operation for months. The math was brutal, but Maria had faced worse odds in Afghanistan, had survived deeper cover in hostile territory, had learned that impossible missions sometimes required impossible solutions. Through the access panel, she could hear the steady rhythm of combat boots above. Hostile operatives moving through the bunker's upper levels with systematic efficiency. Their intelligence was accurate, their timing precise, their equipment military grade, but they hadn't planned for a janitor who remembered every detail of the base's hidden infrastructure. Team Alpha, take positions at Junction 7, Maria whispered into her headset. When I give the signal, we create maximum confusion. These operators expect resistance from the main entrance, not from below. She thought about Sophia's butterfly play, about transformation and courage, about the medal that had remained buried in her closet while she cleaned these same corridors as an invisible guardian. Some transformations happened in moments of crisis, when carefully constructed identities fell away to reveal the person you'd always been underneath. The first hostile operative never saw her coming. Maria emerged from the maintenance shaft with lethal silence, her suppressed weapon dropping 2 guards before they could raise an alarm. Military training flooded back like muscle memory, room-clearing procedures, tactical movement, situational awareness that turned her into something far more dangerous than a cleaning woman. Guardian, this is incredible. Harrison's voice carried amazement alongside tactical updates. You've eliminated 4 hostiles without alerting their main force. But Maria knew the mathematics of small unit tactics. Every success narrowed her options. Every eliminated threat brought her closer to inevitable discovery. Professional operators learned from their losses, adapted their strategies, concentrated their remaining forces. Through the bunker's internal surveillance, she watched the hostile team leader, a woman with cold efficiency and expensive equipment, realize that their intelligence had missed something critical. Maria Santos wasn't just a witness to their operation. She was an active threat with capabilities they hadn't anticipated. All units, we have unknown hostile inside the perimeter, the team leader's voice carried through intercepted communications. Professional training, intimate facility knowledge, adjust tactics accordingly. The acknowledgement brought no satisfaction. Professional recognition from enemy operatives meant they would now treat her as the threat she truly represented. Guardian, can you reach the transmission room? Harrison asked urgently. We're at 60% upload completion, but they've identified our location. Maria studied the tactical display, calculating routes and probabilities. The transmission room sat at the bunker's heart, protected by multiple access points that enemy operatives were systematically breaching. Reaching it would require crossing kill zones, navigating defended corridors, facing professionals who now understood they were fighting more than base security. Her secure phone buzzed one final time. Friendly forces inbound. FBI tactical team 8 minutes out. 8 minutes. The NATO transmission needed 5 more minutes to complete. The hostile operatives would reach the transmission room in 3 minutes unless someone stopped them. Maria made her decision. Colonel, I'm going direct route to the transmission room. When I engage, you'll have maybe 90 seconds of distraction to complete the upload. Guardian, that's suicide. They have superior numbers, defensive positions. They have superior numbers, Maria agreed, moving toward the bunker's central corridor. But I have superior motivation. She thought about military families sleeping safely in base housing because someone watched over them during night shifts. About Sophia practicing her butterfly lines while her abuela protected secrets that kept the world stable. About medals hidden in closets versus the quiet heroism of daily service. The first contact was explosive, literally. Maria's flashbang grenades turned the bunker's main corridor into chaos, disorienting the hostile team long enough for her to engage with devastating precision. Her rifle spoke in controlled bursts, each shot calculated for maximum tactical effect. But professional operators recovered quickly from initial surprise. Return fire forced her into defensive positions, trading space for time, while Harrison's team raced to complete their transmission. 75% complete, Harrison reported. Guardian, your diversion is working, but I know. Maria's voice stayed calm, despite bullets chewing through her cover. Just keep uploading. The hostile team leader appeared through the smoke, weapon trained with lethal competence. For a moment, Maria saw herself reflected in those cold, professional eyes. Another intelligence operative, another soldier following orders, another woman who'd chosen duty over safety. You're good, the team leader called out during a brief lull in firing, but you're outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and we'll extract you with our team." "Tempting offer," Maria replied, reloading with practiced speed. "But I'm kind of attached to this place." The final assault came with overwhelming force, coordinated movement, superior firepower, tactical precision that would have devastated conventional resistance. But Maria fought with something beyond tactical training, the desperate fury of someone protecting everything she'd ever loved. 90%! Harrison's voice carried both hope and desperation. Maria's ammunition ran low as hostile operatives closed the distance. Her sidearm felt familiar in her hands, muscle memory from countless training sessions and too many real firefights. Around her, the bunker filled with smoke and sound and the particular chaos of close-quarters combat. "Oh, 100%! Transmission complete!" The words hit Maria like physical force. 7 years of invisible service, months of careful observation, hours of desperate fighting, all culminating in this moment when critical diplomatic agreements reached their destination, despite enemy operations. FBI tactical teams stormed the bunker just as Maria's strength finally gave way to accumulated wounds. Through fading consciousness, she saw the hostile team leader in custody. Their mission failed, their intelligence proved incomplete. Colonel Harrison knelt beside her as medics worked frantically. "The NATO agreements are secure, Captain. The negotiations will proceed. You saved more than just a military base today." Maria smiled weakly, thinking about butterflies and transformation, about medals earned and recognition delayed. "Just doing my job, Colonel." 7 years of keeping this place safe. As they carried her toward medical attention, she caught sight of her reflection in the bunker's polished surfaces. Not a janitor anymore, not exactly a captain either, but something new, a guardian who'd found her way home through service, both visible and invisible. Her phone showed one final message from Carmen. "Mama, Sophia wants to know if you liked her play. Tell her," Maria whispered to the medic, "that her abuela learned something about butterflies today." 6 months later, Maria Santos, now officially Captain Maria Elena Santos Rodriguez, RET, stood in the base commander's office as Colonel Harrison pinned the Distinguished Service Medal to her uniform. The ceremony was small, classified, attended only by personnel with appropriate clearances. But in the front row sat Carmen and Sophia, finally understanding why their quiet abuela had always seemed to carry invisible strength. "For exceptional courage, under fire, and 7 years of unrecognized service to national security," Harrison read from the citation. After the ceremony, Sophia tugged at her grandmother's dress uniform. "Abuela, are you still going to clean the base?" Maria knelt to meet her granddaughter's eyes. "No, mija, I have a new job now, teaching other people how to watch over important places." The Medal of Valor no longer hid in her closet. It sat on her mantle beside the new commendation, both representing different kinds of service, different kinds of courage. Some transformations, Maria had learned, took years to complete.